Listen to reason. Will you open your eyes?
All right, so we got, oh, okay. Daniel in New York, how are you?
Hi, how are you today?
Good, thanks for calling.
Good. I just wanted to, I've been watching you guys for a while. I'm really impressed with how you put the show together and everything you guys talk about. I'm a sort of a physics aficionado on cosmology, physics, evolution. I read a lot about it after work. I go to the library. I read all day. I wanted to know, I have a question about evolutionary theory, and this is a genuine question. I'm not trying to disillusion you guys and then attack you afterwards.
Sure.
I genuinely want to know the answer. If I understand, to the best of my understanding, evolution is simply, basically, about, I'll try to make it quick, different mutations that occur in the genes, and then those genes are either passed on because they're sometimes more advantageous to the organism.
Small correction. It's not necessarily mutation, but variation that drives the change. And mutation is just a larger, unusual change. Variation.
Okay. These mutations or variations passed on through the gene pool and continuing on for millions of years, and that's basically what happens. Is that correct?
Sure.
So, in a nutshell.
Okay, in a nutshell. So my question is, these mutations or variations to occur, number one, when they occur, there's no promise that they're going to continue to occur, number one, in the same place of the DNA. So, for example, if there was a small animal that had a short neck, and its neck was lengthened, like the giraffe, let's say, there's no guarantee that it's going to continue to do that particular genetic component of the organism for millions of years. It might start changing and start giving it a different characteristic.
Correct.
Right. So my question is, how? So for evolution to really be true, we have to believe that. Number one, I'm not even going to talk about abiogenesis because there's no real popular theory about that. But we have to believe that abiogenesis occurred all over the earth, and then all those organisms consistently, advantageously continued to evolve up until this day. Is that correct?
No.
No.
Okay.
May I?
Yeah.
So how?
There's not an assumption that there's not an assumption that variation will be only in the good direction. If you look at people, for instance, we're all somewhere around 5-6 feet tall when we get older. Some people are anomalies. There's a few outliers that are like 4 feet tall, and there's a few people that are like 7 or 8 feet tall, right? But there's nobody who's like 2 inches tall. You see what I'm saying? So, okay, so when there's variation around a central point. You know what a bell curve is, right?
Yes.
Okay, so the key thing to understand is that individuals don't evolve, but populations evolve. And so let's say that it's for some reason it's good to be taller, and it's dangerous to be shorter for some reason. It might not be very dangerous. It might just be that someone who's 6 feet tall has a 1% greater survival rate than someone who's 5 feet tall. You with me so far?
Yes, sir.
Okay, if that happened, not all the 4 foot tall people would die, right? But what would happen is that the 4 foot tall people would tend to die slightly earlier, and there would be very slightly more 6 foot tall people who happen to make it to childbearing age and pass on their genes. And what happens is that children tend to resemble their parents. So if you're the child of a taller parent, you're more likely to be closer to that 6 foot mark than to that 4 foot mark. So over a number of years, what will happen is that the population of humans as a whole will maybe drift up a centimeter at a time. But then you spread that out over, millions of years, and what you have is a drift that eventually, reaches an equilibrium point, or if it turns out that being taller is always better, which it's generally not, then over millions of years they'd eventually grow to be 10 feet tall or whatever. In other words, it doesn't rely on one lucky mutation, and it doesn't rely on everybody mutating the same way. What it relies on is a gradual drift in features where children resemble their parents, and because the ones with disadvantageous features die slightly earlier on average, the drift goes in the right direction.
And actually, if I can kind of continue real quick, the point that I was objecting to was your claim that there needed to be multiple abiogenesis events happening all over the Earth. That's not necessarily true. And actually, the current thinking is that there was a single event, or at least the current tree of life has spawned from a single event or a single pool of multiples happening in there. There's been a lot of study on that, which since you didn't really go into, I'll save that. I just wanted to point out that it's kind of interesting that you picked the giraffe to talk about for a couple of reasons. One, that Russell was talking about change happening in populations, and the deciding factor of which variations ultimately propagate and which don't is this idea of natural selection. And at different times in different places, there are going to be different criteria for survival. And so if you have a population of creatures with a bunch where most of them are at about the same height, then the ones that are slightly taller that can reach the leaves have an advantage and can pass that on. And as long as that continues to be an advantage and there aren't other things to hinder that, then it's possible that within that population you see an elongated neck. Now, the giraffe neck is one that we can look at, and it isn't in the rock solid evidence against natural selection category that I would say some other pieces of evidence are, like the second chromosome, et cetera. But if you take a look at the laryngeal nerve of the giraffe, you can tell this is not intelligent design. It is something that in a human or in smaller mammals, it's not a big problem for something to do this. And then as the neck gets longer, for it to run all the way up and come all the way back down and do this loop, that's absurd design. And it just speaks volumes about how this is natural selection favoring some traits without regard to others, because it's not enough of a negative for that nerve to be so ridiculously long, even though there's a straight shot route. The idea that that an intelligent being has intelligently designed species, you would think that there would be much better design rather than this a kind of sloppy reuse.
And I'd just like to make a point. When you say incredibly long or useless, what are you comparing it to being incredibly long to? There's no just consensus on the Earth that people decided, this is a good size for a vein, and this is not. It could be as long or as short as it needs to be.
No. It's compared to the options. Okay.
I got an example for
Sure.
you. The human eye has a blind spot. Squid eyes, am I right about that one? Don't have a blind spot. There are different ways that eyes can be so-called designed. And the squid eye just objectively works better. I mean, squids can detect more, they can see better in general. And there's no particular reason that the human eye design would have had to be in humans particularly instead of some similar variation of squid eyes. It's just that they come from different lineages, and the vision of humans and squids evolved on separate tracks, and humans just happen to end up with the worst ones.
But hang on just a second, because your question about who's deciding what's better, the laryngeal nerve of the giraffe starts at the base of the brain, runs all the way down that long neck underneath the heart, and comes back up in order to allow for motor function in the head. Now, in smaller mammals, this isn't a problem because it's a fairly short distance. And in giraffes, I'm not going to say it's a problem. What I actually said was that it's not problematic enough to hinder this elongation of the neck. But if it were intelligently designed, how absurd is it to make a nerve 17 feet long, or however long it needs to be, as opposed to, 6, 8 inches long?
Right. Well, right. I understand what you're saying from a human point of view, but the problem is, efficiently and effectively,
it's not a human point of view.
Whether it's longer or shorter.
It's not a human point of view.
Then what's wrong with it being longer?
It's about intelligent design. Well, first of all, signals take a certain amount of time to travel. It's relatively, not a huge deal. The question is, if you're intelligently designing something, why would you intentionally design a nerve that runs all the way down here for no reason? It doesn't do anything in the intervening space, underneath the aorta and all the way back up to the neck, when you could just go straight across? Isn't that the least optimum path? And isn't it something that if you were the intelligent designer, not only would you not want to do it because it's not optimum, but also it gives those people who begin to dissect animals the exact wrong impression? Because it is exactly what happens when a species that used to have a shorter neck, over time, has a longer neck.
I hear, but if the criteria is only on efficiency, then we should all be one-celled organisms. That's the most efficient of all. There's no need
to No, you don't have to go to the extremes. It's a simple comparison between two options. I'm not going to get mired into the absurdity of, if it's only about efficiency. I'm saying that there's no reason for that nerve that we can identify to go all the way down there, other than the ancestors of that creature that had shorter necks, it went along there as well.
So where do you draw the line between the viable options and the ultimate efficiency? That's what I don't know.
I'm not drawing options between ultimate efficiency and viable options. I'm pointing out that the nerve of this particular creature is entirely consistent with a change in species over time, and seems absurd in the face of a claim of intelligent design. Do you not agree that that's an absurd design?
Right. I mean, I'd like to stick on the point of what perspective are we taking it from when you say absurd? Efficiency is the criteria you're basing it on?
I'm not limiting it to a single. Do you agree that that would be an absurd design?
Only in regards of efficiency, if you want to make it be from point A to point B in the shortest amount of time, yes. But there's no need for it to be quickly.